Hey guys, welcome back to Excel Tech. So we've finally done it and we've actually purchased our second RTX 3090 GPU. And today we're going to actually go through installing the new GPU and see what hash rate we get out of it and putting it onto Ethereum for mining on the rig. So the first thing to do obviously was to find a RTX 3090. And it was not easy trying to find one at a reasonable price here over in Australia, as many retailers were also selling them for an overpriced, dollar value. But I kept checking all the regular IT companies here, and I found one at a reasonable price, close to pretty much what I paid for the first RTX 3090. So we've got the second one here now, and obviously we're unboxing it and preparing it to install into the actual rig. Now once that's done, the first thing we're going to do is actually install the riser and attach the USB cable. So you'll see here that we've got to leave extra space for the new RTX 3090. As I mentioned in my original video, we've got that heat problem with these RTX 3090s on the back plate with the VRAMs overheating all the time. So we need to actually give ourselves more space in between each card to get good airflow, and also now so that I can actually attach an additional fan to blow on the backside of the actual GPU card. So it's something that, as I said in my first video, to remember that I should have got a wider case, because the wider actual frame allows us to have more spacing in between, whereas this kind of mini case, everything's really really close together. So once you've basically screwed on the riser, just attach the USB cable and pretty much you're done. Now on the other end of the USB cable, we now want to actually install our PCIe to USB extender onto the motherboard. So basically just insert it the correct way. It can only go in one way into the board, and then all we need to do after that is plug in our USB cable into the USB slot. Now both sides are connected. Next up is to actually place our GPU onto the GPU riser. So basically take off the protective cover on the GPU, and now what we want to do is actually line up the PCIe X16 receiver there into the PCI riser slot. So just be gentle because the GPU is quite heavy, and just line it up and then carefully slot it in. So you don't want to damage any of the pins on the actual card. So just be careful as you slot it in, and once you've slotted it in, all we need to do after that is to actually screw in the screws to basically hold the GPU so that it doesn't move around, and then you're pretty much done. Now next up is to plug in the power for the PCIe riser. So as I mentioned in my first video, I recommend basically always plugging in the PCIe power 6-pin power into our riser to make sure we get the full 75 watts of power that we need to power the riser correctly. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can click on my part 1 first video on my first rig, and explains the power requirements of the cables and the risers. Once that is done, we're going to take 2 separate 8-pin PCIe cables to plug straight into the GPU. So as you can see, the ASUS TUF RTX 3090 takes only 2 8-pin plugs. So we've got enough connections on our power supply, so we're just going to go 1-to-1 for the connections, 8-pin to 8-pin, to make sure that we have enough power to power the GPU safely and we won't burn any cables down. Now the last thing to do was just basically to do a bit of cable management. So I'm just basically using some Velcro cable ties and also some mesh cord concealer for the actual power lines going into the GPU, just so that everything looks neat and tidy. So that's pretty much the installation of the GPU into the mining rig. So it's fairly simple, and it's it takes a lot less time than we were initially putting the actual rig together. So a couple of things to keep in mind, especially if you're getting an RTX 3090, is that the first thing is you got to remember that I mentioned in my first video is the total power draw. So how much power are you going to actually be drawing from the wall, and how much power you're going to be drawing from your actual power unit. and you need to take all these into account and make sure that when you're actually splitting power cables into your risers, etc., that you've got enough power and that the cables that you're running can support enough power for the actual splits that you're going to make. Secondly, get a wider frame. So, make sure there's enough space in between each GPU so that you can get kind of good airflow in between them. So number 3, if you're going to get an RTX3090 or 3080, you're going to have to need more space if you're going to actually add an additional fan to blow on the back plate for active cooling, because the 3080s and 3090s have that VRAM temperature overheating problem on the back plate. So it's something that you need to keep in mind if you're going to get a 3090 or a 3080 series NVIDIA card. So that's this part of the installation of the hardware. And next we're going to actually go into HiveOS and put the settings in to make sure we can get our 120 mega hash for our new RTX 3090. So I've just finished setting up the hardware and installing the GPU onto the mining rig, and now we're going to come into HiveOS and set up HiveOS to start mining. So the idea on the new card is to mine Ethereum directly. So I'm going to add it to the flight sheet. So the first thing I'm going to see here is that we can see the new card being detected correctly. So that's a good sign. So we know everything's working correctly. So we're going to come in here and edit our flight sheet. So I'm going to add a new miner. I'm going to go Ethereum, select my wallet. The pool we're going to join is, we're going to test FlexPool because they do have an Australian server, and I have been doing a little bit of research to see which pool is best, but I'm going to try FlexPool first, and I'll post the results for everybody after a couple of days to see how much we've actually mined. So we'll go apply and go T-Rex miner, which is what I prefer. Right, so we can't choose the same miner for different coins. So I think what I'm going to do is try MB miner because it seems to be a pretty good one as well. Okay, so to set up each of the individual GPUs to mine something different, we need to actually do some tweaks to the configurations. So I need to go back and just check the numbers. So GPU 0 is what we're going to continue mining the SHIB, and then GPU, the second one, GPU 1, we're going to mine Ethereum, so that's the new one. So I'm going to come back to flight sheet and I'm going to edit. So the first GPU 0, we're going to mine SHIBA INU coin still. So I'm going to go up to setup miner config, and here in extra config arguments, there's we can define which number. So we're going to just go 0 and apply changes. So that's going to set up GPU 0 to mine SHIBA INU coin. And with MB miner here, same thing, we're going to come down here to extra config arguments. We're going to go devices, and I'm also going to go 0. No, we're going to go 1. So GPU 1, apply changes. So I'm just going to double check again. So device 0 for this one, and MB miner device 1. Okay, so that should be it. I'm going to update it. I'm going to hit the rocket button to let it go. So we're going to be charged a fee because we've got a couple of mining rigs now. Go apply. So now we'll see the rig is starting to run. Okay, so we've reloaded everything and we can see that it's starting to run. So we got the settings correct. So GPU 0 mining on unminable, and GPU 1 mining on flex pool. So it looks like we're getting a little bit less in terms of the hash rate on the second GPU, even though we've got the same settings here. So I might play around with that a little bit later, but essentially we're getting the same rate. So it might just be a matter of people say silicon lottery, but I'll have a look at that later. So there you go, guys. So we've basically got all the two new cards, the new card and the old card, RTX3090 is running, and we've got the CPU mining as well, Raptorium. So I hope everyone has enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing and liking. Okay, bye!